yourself to the jury.
My name is Casandra Ynclan. I'm a detective with the Chandler Police Department in our robbery homicide unit.
Can you tell us about your career with the Chandler Police Department?
So next week, I will have 24 years at the department. Started in patrol, graduated through the Phoenix Police Academy. I have no prior, all my experiences with Chandler. Started in patrol, I worked there a couple years and then was selected to move into a newer unit they created, which was more of a general investigations unit. Worked assaults, burglaries, thefts, kind of entry-level detective type cases. We had a reorganization I'd been in that unit about a year and a half, and that unit morphed into our family violence unit. So at that point, my cases became primarily physical child abuse cases, some missing person type cases, and then the majority was domestic violence, assaults, aggravated assaults, things like that. Worked in that unit for a couple years and then moved into our narcotics and organized crime unit and worked in that unit for about 5 years, doing primarily large-scale narcotics investigations. In September of 2009, I was selected and moved into our robbery and homicide unit, and I've been in that unit since September of 2009, where I am now.
As part of your job, are you called out to respond to scenes?
Yes.
And what are your normal working hours?
So we work 4 10s, so 4 10-hour shifts a week. There are 6 people in our unit. So I am one of the 3 that works Tuesday to Fridays, and then the other half of our unit works Monday to Thursdays. But there is one detective in our unit that's on call all the time. And then depending on the scale of the case, the on-call is responsible for being available to come in off hours. But depending on the scale of the case, they'll call in additional detectives to help, sometimes supplementing from other units within the department, depending on the case.
Were you working on Thursday, July 11th of 2019?
I was.
And where were you located? Where's your office?
So my office is at our main precinct, which is in downtown Chandler. But that day, I was not in the office. I was driving to kind of a community event that was in West Chandler.
Were you asked to respond to a scene at 5531 South Four Peaks Place in Chandler, Maricopa County, Arizona?
I was.
Why were you asked to respond to that house?
So I had initially heard some radio traffic about a potential shooting that had happened there. And then, so I was aware of the call for service that was going on that patrol had responded to. And then I was contacted by my supervisor shortly thereafter by phone because I wasn't in the station. And they had asked that myself and several detectives respond down to assume that investigation from patrol.
Do you recall approximately when you arrived at that house?
I believe it was right around 9:28, 9:30 is my arrival time on CAD, but it would have been within a couple minutes of that, depending on how significant the radio traffic was that I could get out onto the radio.
In 2019, as a detective, did you have body-worn camera assigned to you?
We did not.
So you were not wearing a body cam unit at that time?
No, we did not get ours issued until, I believe, a couple years later.
Okay. Can you describe for us the crime scene when you arrived?
So when I arrived in the neighborhood, it's a gated community. I arrived on the north side of where the residence was. Marked patrol units and uniformed patrol officers were there. There was already yellow crime scene about a house or 2 north and a house or 2 south. And I could see several of the initial patrol officers that had responded that were present when I got there.
When you got there, was the fire engine still there?
I believe they were, but there was what we call our care unit. Our CR 288 is the crisis unit. They're a fire personnel, but they respond out to our scenes at our request as well.
Okay, and so that was there.
Correct.
Did you observe any individuals that you learned to be the shooter at the scene?
I did. Alex Cox.
Can you describe where you saw him?
So when I approached the house, I was walking south towards the house. He was seated on a curb. I remember there being like a trash can or something right there. And Officer Krautheim was outside. And I remember seeing him sitting there as I walked past up to a supervisor at the scene.
And can you describe for us the demeanor of Alex Cox when you went by him?
He was sitting on the curb, didn't really appear, just kind of normal, wasn't really agitated or upset. He had what looked like, I think it was a paper towel or Kleenex in his hand. And at one point he reached back and kind of touched the back of his head. But he was just seated, just kind of sitting there.
Did you observe yourself any injuries at that time to his head?
I did not. I didn't have contact with him at the scene at all.
Okay. When you arrive at a scene like that as a detective, what's sort of the process of what does everyone do when you get there?
So initially what we try is that the first one or two investigative type personnel usually will make immediate contact with the supervisor on scene, usually a sergeant or a lieutenant, and try to just kind of do a quick assessment or triage of what's going on. What is kind of the quick initial what happened? Is anybody outstanding? What are kind of the things we need to do? Because then as personnel from like my unit and other investigative units arrive, we can start assigning tasks and roles. We always, by practice, assign a case agent, and then a scene agent is separate. And then any other personnel that get there start assigning tasks, what needs to be done, what needs to happen.
So what is the roles of a detective versus the patrol officers who've been there?
So patrol officers are going to be your first responders. They are going to be the ones that dispatch when you call 911 or the non-emergency number. Patrol is going to come to your house first. They're the uniformed in a marked patrol car. They're going to respond out and do the initial investigation, initial scene safety, initial first aid until it's safe for fire to get there. They're going to be your initial first responders. If the call or event or incident that they're responding to is going to be more significant or more serious or maybe needs more specialized equipment or investigation or potentially they might need a search warrant, then you're going to see where detectives are going to get called out to assume an investigation from patrol. So there will be some overlap. And then once we come out and kind of take the investigation over, patrol then gets released from the event, and it will become kind of property of the detectives that come out to assume the case.
Do you have patrol officers still helping things like securing the scene and making sure that, no one is just running up into the house or something?
Absolutely.
While you were on scene, did you notice any other civilians kind of waiting around?
Yes.
Who did you notice?
At one point, I realized that where Officer Krautheim was standing, basically across from the house, it was within the crime scene, that an adult female, Lori Vallow, and then her daughter, Tylee, had at some point got there. I'm not sure exactly when, but I realized that they were standing in the vicinity of Officer Krautheim within the crime scene near a red car.
Did you see the interaction between Officer Krautheim and these two, Lori Vallow and Tylee?
I did from across the street.
When you saw that interaction, did you know who they were at that point?
I did not know who they were. I found out a short time later.
Okay. So did Officer Krautheim advise you and other detectives who they were?
Yes.
So you said the female was Lori Vallow?
Correct.
Do you see her in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you point her out and identify what she's wearing?
She's seated at the defense table wearing like a navy blue blazer.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
It shall.
Can you describe Lori Vallow's demeanor when you saw her across the street there?
So she was standing, the car they were near was parked along the curb, and she was standing basically in front of the parked car, and Tylee was standing next to her. Just kind of appeared to be having this kind of ordinary interaction with Officer Krautheim, just kind of talking to him, didn't seem real animated or emotional. Just seemed very kind of ordinary and kind of nonchalant.
Were any police cars visible at the crime scene?
Yes.
And so there's yellow crime scene tape up.
Correct.
Okay. So when Officer Krautheim came over, did he talk to you and some other detectives?
He did.
And did he advise you about his interaction with Ms. Vallow and Tylee?
He didn't talk to me about their interaction. He just more identified who they were.
Okay.
And at that point, we had had some discussion about kind of additional rules that had just developed.
So at some time while you're sitting there and you're standing around talking with sergeants and whatnot, is that when you learned who you believed to be the shooter, Alex Cox, was?
Yes.
And at some time while you are again getting these updates, did you learn who the deceased male was inside the residence?
Correct.
And who was that?
That was Charles Vallow.
During this time, did it become known to you the relationship between Lori Vallow and Alex Cox?
Correct. They were brother-sister.
And during this time, did you become aware of the relationship between Ms. Vallow and Charles Vallow?
Correct. Husband-wife.
After you, I guess during the time when you were speaking with these officers, were you updated by Officer Krautheim about whether or not Lori Vallow knew her husband was dead?
No. I had talked to my sergeant actually about speaking with her specifically about doing what we refer to as a death notification.
Well, let me go back. So did you believe that Lori Vallow knew her husband was dead?
I did not.
You thought she had no idea?
I didn't think she knew because she wasn't there when I got there.
Had you been advised that by Officer Krautheim or his sergeant relating to information he had received from Alex Cox that she was not present?
I didn't believe that she was present at the time the incident occurred prior to me speaking with her.
Okay. And that was based upon information that you had obtained from briefings?
Correct.
Okay. Since you thought that Lori Vallow did not know her husband was deceased, what did you do?
So I had a brief discussion with my sergeant, and we agreed that it would be the right thing to do a death notification to her. She is legally his wife. They are married. She would be his legal next of kin. She's standing basically in the crime scene, and I think professionally it's in delaying letting someone know that their loved one is deceased isn't appropriate. So we made a decision at that point to contact her to do an actual death notification. So it was clear that he was deceased.
Okay. So because she's there at the scene, do you just walk up to her while she's standing right there in front of the car to notify her? How do you do that?
No, so her and Tylee were now seated within the care unit that I had mentioned, our CR 288. They have a van, and we utilize it a lot. So they were seated within that van. I had approached the van with my sergeant, and my intention was to try to get her to come out of the van because Tylee was in there with her, so I could have a discussion with her outside of the view of any children. When I made contact with her, we ended up having the conversation with her in the van with Tylee.
So let me ask this. What was her demeanor when you see her in this van?
Pretty much the same as her demeanor before. Not real emotional. She was pretty calm. Didn't seem overly affected.
I think you had used nonchalant previously.
Yeah, it's a good word to describe it.
So how did that notification go down? Were you able to tell her what happened?
So opened the van. I made contact with her. I think at some point I asked her something to the effect if she would step out of the van to talk to me. And at that point she said that she already knew because she was there, which was kind of a surprise. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. And at that point I confirmed with her that he had died and he was deceased, and quickly kind of conferred with my sergeant away that at this point her and Tylee are now witnesses to the event and they need to be interviewed, obviously.
Okay. So it's normal for detectives to have to make death notifications,
Yes,
and you have made death notifications in other cases.
unfortunately, yes.
And so in this case, you yourself was the one surprised to learn that you didn't have to give her a death notification.
I was.
Did her demeanor change at all when she's telling you that she was there and knew he was dead?
No.
So at this point, now that you know that it's not just a death notification, she now may have relevant information, what happens at that point?
I had made a request of her that we would like to obviously talk to her, and if I could transport them back to the police station. If possible, we like to do the interviews in a more contained environment, obviously one that we can record, and one that's not in the middle of a crime scene. So I had asked if her and Tylee would come back to the police station with me, and I ultimately ended up driving both of them back to the police station.
Is there a special area at the police station that you took them to?
I did. I took them to what's referred to as our FAC, which is our Family Advocacy Center.
What's the difference between the FAC and, maybe what people have seen on TV of just like the cold room with a table and two chairs?
So the Family Advocacy Center is a separate part of the police department. It actually has a separate entrance, and it's designed specifically for like victims of crime. We do forensic interviews of children there. There are not uniformed officers that work within that area. It's designed specifically for like victims of crime. We do use it sometimes, obviously, for witnesses. There will never be like in custody and custodial, like suspect interviews or anything in there. It's a separate section of the police department that's kind of an entity on its own.
So when you're going to interview Lori Vallow, do you have any concept sort of what she saw, what her involvement is at that point?
No.
So when you said you drove her and Tylee to the police station?
I did.
So they left their car at the scene.
They did. They came with me in my city vehicle.
can you describe Lori's demeanor as you're driving her to the police station?
So obviously I drove. She was in the front passenger seat. Tylee was seated behind her. The majority of the drive, we were actually talking about Tylee. It's a little bit awkward because you're trying not to talk about anything that happened until you can get to the police station. So you're trying to kind of make this strange small talk almost. But we were talking primarily about Tylee and her schooling and such. But we were driving and she was just kind of chattering along as we were driving.
Did she seem stressed at all while she's talking to you?
Not really.
Did she, was she crying or emotional at all while you're driving?
No.
While you were before you left in the car, did she ever try to ask you any questions about how her brother was doing or what, what's going on with her husband or anything like that?
Not of me, no.
When you got her to the police station, how long did that take approximately?
It's probably a 20-minute drive from the house to where the station is, about.
And was she chatting away the whole time?
For the majority of it.
When you get to the police station, do you separate Lori and her daughter, Tylee?
I did.
And was that interview audio and video recorded?
It was.
Was she free to leave at any time?
Yes.
Did you know if she had a cell phone with her when you were interviewing her?
I don't believe, well, she did, she had a phone with her at one point, but she wasn't on it or doing anything.
Okay. Did she provide you with a cell phone number when you were talking to her?
In the initial part of the interview, yes. The initial part of the interview is biographical, name, date of birth, phone number, address, that type of thing.
Did you ever ask to look at her cell phone?
I did not.
Did she ever offer to show you her cell phone?
She did not.
Did you know at that point, well, let me ask you, had you been inside the scene at that point, inside the house?
So I did not go in the house until later. Prior to me coming back to the scene later, I was never inside the house.
Okay. So at that point, when you are first meeting with Lori, to driving her there, did you know if she had Charles Vallow's cell phone with her?
I did not know.
Did you sort of assume that Charles Vallow's cell phone would have been at the scene with him?
I did assume that, yes.
So I want to start with, you told us that you asked some basic biographical information. And Your Honor, if I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 186.
Go ahead.
Have you watched that CD, Exhibit 186, previously?
I have, yes.
Is your initial on it to identify that you've watched it?
My initials and my badge number.
And is that to identify that you recognize that as the part of the interview where you're asking Lori Vallow for biographical information?
Correct.
And that shows it's an accurate copy of that portion of the interview?
Yes.
State will move to admit Exhibit 186.
Any objection?
The only objection is to the portion, Your Honor. Is it not going to be a full?
It's
just a portion of
redacted.
it.
Are you saying it's redacted?
This is only one portion of it. We're going to be going through lots of portions of it.
What was the number?
186.
186 is admitted.
And Your Honor, if I can publish it.
Go ahead.
Okay. I know Laura's your first name, right? L-A-U-R?
Lori.
Okay. And then what's your last name?
Vallow. V-A-L-L-O-W.
And your date of birth?
6/26/73.
And then your phone number?
808-755-5452.
And you live at the house, right?
So in this portion that we see in 186, she gave you a phone number of the 808-755-5452.
Correct.
During your investigation, did you learn that Lori Vallow had more than one cell phone?
I did.
Did you learn whether or not she was employed outside the home?
I don't believe she was.
Okay. Did you ever read her Miranda rights?
No.
Why not?
She was not in custody. She was there consensually. And at the time that I was talking to her, as what I believe to be a witness.
Now, did you talk to her about sort of when she moved into the house, some background about her son and Charles, and that relationship?
Yes.
My paralegal can approach with Exhibit 187.
Go ahead.
Do you recognize Exhibit 187, again, having your initials and badge number on it?
I do, yes.
And is that marked as clip 2, the portion of your interview where Lori Vallow is telling you about sort of moving into the house and some background on JJ and Charles?
That's correct.
State will move to admit 187.
Any objection?
The objection would be Rule 106, Your Honor, the rule of completeness. We would ask that the whole thing be played,
All right.
the entire video.
The objection's overruled. The exhibit's admitted.
And if we can publish it.
Well, so we moved into this house 3 weeks ago because he offered to get me a house here where all my family is. So we were in Houston. And so he's like, we had decided to separate or whatever. So he's like, well, I'll pay for a house for you and for JJ and whatever, because he's all about JJ. He's never about Tylee, but he's all about JJ. Right? Because we adopted him together. He's his great nephew. We adopted him as a baby. So he was like a drug baby and had all these problems. And so we adopted him as a baby, and so we've been raising him together. And he travels all the time for business, so he's used to just going back and forth. So he's always gone like Monday through Friday. So he came when we first moved in and brought me stuff from Houston, like a U-Haul. And then he hasn't been back. But it's all these threats on my phone all the time, you know, like whatever, all these things. And then he told me...
What kind of threats?
Just... You'd have to read them to see, but he's always mad at me, right?
Okay.
And he doesn't want a divorce, but I don't like him and don't want to deal with him, so that's just how it is. Like,
So I want to talk a little bit about this portion of your interview with Lori Vallow. She told you about the adoption of JJ by her and Charles, correct?
Correct.
And that JJ suffered from some disabilities.
That's right.
During this part of the interview, did she tell you that Charles had sent some threatening messages on the phone?
She did. She said there were threats on her phone.
Did she ever offer to show you those threats?
She did not.
So she has a phone with her, but she didn't show you anything.
No.
Did she ever explain what she meant?
No.
And we had just discussed that she had given you a phone number of 808, correct?
Correct.
And during that investigation, or this investigation, sort of in the days that followed, did you learn later that most of the communication between Charles Vallow and Lori Vallow was on one of her other cell phones, the one with a 480 area code?
I did.
So even though she gives you a totally different number, that's not the phone that you understood to have the communications between her and Charles.
Right.
Does she also say in that clip that Charles Vallow didn't want a divorce from her?
That's correct.
And did she tell you that she didn't even like Charles
Yes.
and that she didn't want to deal with him
Yes.
and that he traveled to just kind of get away?
Correct.
When you were talking with Lori Vallow, did she tell you that Charles had filed something against her saying she was crazy and asking to limit her supervised visitation?
That's correct.
And did she tell you that sort of in retaliation that she basically stopped talking to him and JJ for 30 days?
Correct. That he was in Houston. JJ was in Houston with Charles.
If I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 188. And do you recognize Exhibit 188 as also being signed and have your badge number on that?
Yes.
Meaning you've reviewed it and has identified that as that portion of your interview with Lori Vallow, including those areas of the supervised visitation.
Correct.
State will move to admit Exhibit 188.
Your Honor, we're going to object that the whole interview should be played.
All right, 188, 188 submitted.
And if we can publish it.
Go ahead.
him, and I didn't file anything or whatever. And then he filed something against me and said I'm only going to get supervised visits because I'm crazy and blah blah blah. You know the story. And so I just didn't talk to him for like 30 days and let him take care of him and let him see what I've been doing.
So I know it got cut off sort of in the end there. She told you that after he filed this paperwork saying she was only going to get supervised visits, that she just didn't talk to him for 30 days.
Correct.
Should we break
All right,
for-
let's take our afternoon stretch break, recess, 15 minutes. Please remember the admonition.
Watched Exhibit 188, a portion of your interview where Lori Vallow was telling you that Charles had filed something against her, saying she was crazy and asking to limit her to supervised visitation. Did you understand or know what that was about at that time?
I did not.
Did you talk to Lori Vallow about sort of Charles coming into town?
Yes,
So you understood that he did not live here in Phoenix.
I did.
And did she talk to you about booking a room for Charles and that he was going to come out and see JJ, his son?
Yes.
If my paralegal can approach with Exhibit 189.
Go ahead.
And do you recognize Exhibit 189, again, that says Clip 4 with both your signature and badge?
Yes.
And is that the portion of the interview where you are talking to Lori about Charles coming into town, him traveling and coming here to see JJ?
It is.
State will move to admit 189.
Any objection?
We'll object, Your Honor. The defense will on Rule 106 of completion. Ask that the whole interview just be played.
All right. Was it 109?
189.
I'm sorry, 189 is admitted.
And if we could publish it.
The time because he travels for business and the business pays for it, right? So I said I will book you a hotel nearby.
What does he do?
He works with teachers in their retirement plans, but he goes to them at their school.
Oh,
He
okay.
mostly works in California.
Okay.
No matter.
What's the vocal? Okay. So she advised that she booked a hotel for him.
So the audio wasn't on initially when that played,
Okay.
but there is a portion in the interview where she does tell me that.
Where she says, I'll book you a hotel.
Correct.
During your interview, did Lori Vallow tell you that Charles traveled a lot for his work?
Yes.
And did she tell you that his travel was an excuse not to care for his son?
Yes, that he was gone a lot.
Did Lori Vallow tell you that she had left Charles Vallow in Texas and moved back to Arizona?
That's correct.
And did she tell you that Charles was still living in Texas?
Yes, in the Houston area.
Did she say that Charles had rented her a house for her and JJ and her daughter Tylee to live?
Correct.
Did you talk to her about whether or not she had an interaction with Charles the night before, on
Yes.
July 10th? And did she advise that it was just limited to a text message?
Correct. Not in person, just via the phone.
Okay. My paralegal can approach with Exhibit 190. And do you recognize that, again, with your initials and badge number,
Correct.
as a portion of your interview where Lori Vallow was telling you that Charles was not at the house that night, he just let her know he'd be over at 7:30 the next morning?
That's right.
State will move to admit 190.
Same objection.
Same objection, Your Honor.
Right, 190 is admitted.
Kind of his macho attitude. And so he came this morning. I was getting JJ ready.
So
for
he got in last night, but he wasn't at the house last night.
Yeah, I didn't hear from him, except for he texted me and said, I'll be there at 7:30 to pick up JJ.
Okay.
And I was like,
So you understood that she had no interaction with Charles on July 10th,
In person, correct.
but she knew what time to expect Charles the next morning on July 11th at 7:30.
Right.
When you were talking with her, did you talk to her about what time Charles actually showed up?
Yes.
And did she say 7:40, 7:35-ish?
I believe she said 7:35.
My paralegal can approach with Exhibit 191.
Go ahead.
And again, do you recognize Exhibit 191 as having been initialed and have your badge number on it?
I do.
And is that in clip number 6, the portion of your interview where she's talking about what time Charles showed up that morning?
Correct.
State will move to admit 191.
Same objection.
Yes, Your Honor, the defense objects.
All right, 191 is admitted.
And if we can publish.
Go ahead.
so
Do you remember about what time he got there?
he said he'd be there 7:30, but it was more like 7:40-ish
Okay.
or 7:35, I don't know.
Okay.
But I remember thinking, looking at the clock, and he wasn't there at 7:30, and he's usually Mr.
Yeah.
On
Punctual.
time. Yes.
So at this point, you understand that Lori Vallow knew Charles was coming to Arizona,
Correct.
and she knew he was going to show up on the 11th at 7:30 a.m.,
Correct.
and that he was coming there to pick up their son, JJ.
Yes.
Did the defendant talk to you about when Charles shows up, sort of how they get JJ in the car, and that she goes out to the car with Charles and JJ, and then that she ultimately ends up with Charles's cell phone?
That's right.
My paralegal can approach with Exhibit 192. And do you again recognize that with your initials and your badge number?
I do.
Clip number 7, a portion of the interview where you are being told by Lori Vallow that she put JJ in the car, and eventually how she got Charles's phone.
Correct.
State will move to admit 192.
Same objection.
The defense will object to 106.
192. 192.
I'm sorry. The rule 106
Oh.
is the objection. I'm sorry.
Got you. All right, 192 is admitted.
And if I may publish.
Go ahead.
You know, he's just been difficult, so.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I got Jada stuff ready, and he was like, well, and he's like this about timing. He's like, I'm leaving in 20 minutes, because it's like 15 minutes to the school, and like you can't get there early, they don't open the gates until 8:20 or something like that. And I said, well, why don't you just go now? I don't want him in the house. I'm like, why don't you just go now and take him to Burger King, because that's what he likes for breakfast. And he's very particular about food. Like, he wanted chicken fries for breakfast and a Sprite. Like, and I just get what he wants, because if you don't get what he wants, then it's like on the floor screaming, dragging him in, just going like, and he's big and he's heavy and it's hard for me to handle. But anyway, so I said, just go. And so he said, okay. So I gave him a backpack. He got in the car. This is his MO, right? He always leaves something in the house and comes back. He never leaves the first time. I always expect my husband to come back into the house, right? So I guess he had left his phone on the counter.
So he initially left with the backpack and with JJ?
And so he put them in the car,
Okay.
in the driveway, and then he came back in, right? So I kissed JJ goodbye. He came back in, and his phone was on the counter, and I had his phone. And he was like, give me my phone. And I was like, why don't you show me your text that you've been texting, blah, 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 you know, whatever. Because he's like acting really weird, like he's plotting something against me. Like, I'm like, why are you even here? Like, what did you come here for, you know? He's been talking to my other brother, and my brother came into town at the same time last night. And I haven't talked to my brother in a while, my other brother, and I was like, and so he was texting him on the phone when he first got to my house, and I'm like, why are you texting Adam? Like, do you even talk to him? Like my other brother.
So in this portion, Lori Vallow told you that she kissed JJ goodbye and Charles took JJ and the backpack out to the car,
Correct.
and that she went inside and got a hold of Charles's cell phone.
Correct.
And did she tell you that Charles came back inside and saw her with the phone and told her to give it back to him?
That's right.
Did Lori Vallow ever tell you that she gave the phone back to Charles?
She did not.
So Lori Vallow is telling you that Charles is demanding the phone back, and she instead says, show me your text messages?
Correct.
We heard previously that Lori Vallow had told you that Charles had taken JJ away from her for 30 days, and so she didn't talk to him, right?
That he had JJ for 30 days and they didn't talk, yes.
And so now she's telling you she's demanding to know why he's in Arizona? Why he came to Arizona? Is that what she said? Why are you even here?
I believe so, yes.
So Charles had to take care of his son, and now he's here to visit his son?
Correct.
Is what
Correct.
she even said.
Yes.
So did she tell you that she had confronted Charles about texting her brother, Adam,
In
in this portion of the interview?
the portion of the interview, she discusses with me asking Charles why he's talking to her brother, Adam.
And were you aware at this time, when you are interviewing Lori Vallow, that Charles and Adam had been texting?
No,
Did you even know who Adam was at that point?
I didn't know who Adam was.
And so, and again, I think you told us you were not aware at that time that Lori Vallow was in possession of Charles Vallow's phone.
Correct.
And were you aware at that time that Charles had flown Adam in?
No,
So you're just kind of hearing this and listening to what she's saying.
correct.
Did you go into some additional detail about, again, Charles demanding that Lori Vallow give him back his cell phone?
Yes.
I can have my paralegal approach with clip 197.
Go ahead.
It was out of order. Clip 8. Do you recognize Exhibit 197, Clip 8?
I do.
And again, did you initial and put your badge number on that?
I did.
And did that reflect, again, another portion of your interview where Lori Vallow is describing to you what is going on when Charles Vallow is demanding his phone back, what she does?
Correct.
State will move to admit Exhibit 197.
Same objection.
Defense will object to playing the whole video, Your Honor.
197.
Yes,
197 is admitted.
and if we may publish.
Go ahead.
And 14.
Okay. So this morning he comes back in
He
and,
comes back in, I wouldn't give him his phone, he was screaming at me to give him his phone. He was very worried about whatever was on his text that he did not want me to see. And so I was just holding it there and he was screaming at me. And I was kind of walking towards around the house with it so he couldn't get it. He's like reaching for it and stuff like that.
So this is the second time that Lori Vallow is telling you that Charles is telling her to give him back his phone,
Correct.
and she is refusing to do so.
Yes.
And she advised that she was walking around the house, right?
Correct.
So he's screaming at her, and she's walking around.
Correct.
During this initial confrontation over the phone, does Lori Vallow tell you it's just her and Charles?
Yes.
And so did you ever ask her why she didn't just give the phone back to Charles so he could take JJ to school?
I did not.
During your interview with Lori Vallow, did she tell you at some point that since she wouldn't give Charles back the phone and he's screaming at her, that her daughter Tylee and her brother Alex came out?
She did.
Did she tell you that her daughter Tylee came out with a bat?
She did.
Did she tell you that Tylee sort of poked at Charles with the bat
Yes.
while she and Charles were arguing?
Correct.
And did she tell you that Charles took the bat away from Tylee and Tylee sort of fell back or something?
Correct.
She ended up on the floor.
Correct.
And that Lori then told her to go outside to JJ.
Yes.
Did Lori Vallow ever tell you why her brother Alex Cox brought a loaded gun to her house?
She did not.
Did she tell you that she had asked Alex to come over to the house?
She did.
Did she ever tell you, well, let me say, so when she talked to you, she told you that she had wanted Alex to be there sort of to protect her in case anything went bad, right?
Correct.
So did she tell you why Alex didn't go to the door with her when Charles is pounding on the door being a jerk or whatever?
She did not.
So she didn't explain why the gun was there or why Alex wasn't part of this initial phone argument?
Correct.
Did Lori ever tell you during your interview that Charles started this argument?
No,
During your interview of Lori Vallow, was it always her saying that it was her that started this argument because she would not give Charles back his phone?
correct.
So she told you that she was afraid of Charles coming over, invited her brother over to protect her, and then she started a fight by refusing to give Charles back his phone.
Correct.
During this interview, did Lori tell you that after Tylee went out to be with JJ, that Charles came at her with a bat?
Yes.
And that she moved into the kitchen and that while she was not able to see what was going on, she hears a shot?
That's correct.
If I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 193. Clip 9. Do you recognize Exhibit 193?
I do.
Did you initial and put your ID on that?
I did.
And is that a portion of this of your interview with Lori Vallow, where she talks about what her brother is doing and Charles is doing, and her walking around into the kitchen with the phone?
Yes.
The state will move to admit Exhibit 193.
Same objection, Your Honor.
All right, 193 submitted.
And if we may publish.
Go ahead.
Yeah, she was outside,
And then what happened?
then they got up from that, and my brother had like stepped back, I guess, and then Charles was coming with me at the back, yelling at me to give him his phone still, because I had it in my hand. It was all really quickly, and then when I went around kind of in the circle, then my brother was there.
When you said when you were going around and he was coming at you with the bat, how was he holding the bat?
Just like that, like backwards, almost in one arm.
Like he was swinging it backwards? He would have done like
Like he would have swung it backwards at me, not frontwards.
okay.
One second. So in this clip, she's describing to you how how Charles was swinging the bat at her, correct?
Correct.
And in that clip, does she, or let me ask you this, does she go on to talk to you about whether or not her husband was a semi-professional baseball player?
She did, yes.
And she told you that, again, Charles is holding a bat and yelling at her to give him his phone,
Correct.
and she didn't give him back the phone?
She did not.
Did she talk to you about whether or not she saw the shot?
Yes.
Did she say she saw it or not?
She did not see the shot. She heard the shot.
So she indicated she does not. Did she indicate whether or not she saw her brother pull out a gun?
No.
Did she indicate whether or not she saw her brother go get a gun?
She did not.
Did she indicate how many shots she heard?
She specifically said the shot, as in one shot.
Did you at some point, well, let me ask again. So you had not been into this residence yet.
No.
So when she's telling you she's going around, did you understand what that was?
Not really, because I hadn't been inside. she was kind of describing the kitchen and the room they were in, but I hadn't seen it firsthand.
Okay. When you were talking to Lori Vallow, did you ask her if Charles or her brother Alex had said anything before Alex shot Charles?
Yes,
And did she indicate she doesn't recall hearing that?
correct.
And if my paralegal can approach with Exhibit 195, clip 11. Do you recognize Exhibit 195?
I do.
And again, it's your initials and badge on that.
But it is.
And is that portion of the interview where you asked her if she'd heard anything said between Charles and Alex prior to the shooting?
Correct.
State will move to admit 195.
Same objection.
Same objection, Your Honor.
195 is admitted.
And if we may publish.
I gotta get to the kids, and so I just went outside and to see if they were in there. Okay, I didn't want them coming back in the house when all that was going on, and got Gigi in the car, and he was trying to come in, and Tylee was like looking at me.
That's actually the wrong one. Well, play that one, I guess. Let me see, and we'll talk about that one since it's admitted. Okay. We're gonna play that one? Yeah, we'll play it and talk about it.
I gotta get to the kids, and so I just went outside and to see if they were in there. Okay, I didn't want them coming back in the house when all that was going on, and got Gigi in the car, and he was trying to come in, and Tylee was like looking at me with like the crazy eyes, like what just happened, and I told her to get in the car and we're gonna take Gigi to school, and I just left.
When you came back in and you saw him on the ground, where was your brother? Did you see him where he was at?
Yeah, he was right in front of him.
Okay.
Like,
So in exhibit, what we have is 195, is that actually then the portion where she's talking about what she did after as well as what Alex was doing when she went back in there?
Correct.
So she advised you that after she heard this shot, she just left
She did. She went outside.
and then drove off in Charles's rental car?
Correct.
And she told you that when she saw Charles on the floor, Alex was standing in front of him.
Correct.
Did you ask her to describe any distance of how far away?
I did not.
And then if we can approach then with, what is code number? I think that is exhibit 194. Is that, again, a portion of this interview where we're talking about the shots, actually?
Correct.
And you watched that previously and initialed it and put your badge number on it?
I did.
State will move to admit 194.
Same objection, Your Honor.
194 is admitted.
Okay, yeah.
he was a professional baseball player. So it wasn't a good idea for Tyler to get out of that.
Probably not the.
I mean, he played semi-pro when he was young. But, yeah, and then I was kind of turned around, and we were all right there in that room, except for the kids had been outside by that time, and I heard the gunshot. And
So you heard the shot? Did you actually see the shot, or did you just hear it?
I had gone around to the kitchen to get away from him, and so back around. So I don't know if he went in the house.
I didn't, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, so I didn't see the shot. I heard it, and then I came back around and I saw that he was on the ground.
Okay.
Okay. So, again, that's the portion where she is advising you that she only heard the shot but didn't see the shot.
Correct.
So she's advising you she doesn't know what her brother was doing.
Reasonably, yes.
During this whole interview that you had with Lori Vallow, did she ever tell you that she handed over the phone to Charles?
She did not know.
So during the initial confrontation, when it's just her and Charles and he's demanding her phone, she won't give it back to him.
Correct.
When her daughter comes out and involves herself in this altercation, she wouldn't give him back the phone.
Correct.
And she advised that he's still at that point demanding his phone.
Yes.
And again, he's there to take JJ to school, right?
Right.
And then her brother comes out, and again, he's demanding the phone, and she still won't give it to him.
Correct.
Did she ever explain to you why she didn't just hand the phone back over?
She did not know.
If I can have my paralegal approach with 286. Have you looked at Exhibit 286 before?
I have.
And is your initials and badge on that?
It is, yes.
And is that a copy of the full interview?
It is, yes.
So it includes whatever conversations you had throughout that, about Charles Vallow and her views on him,
Yes.
and repeatedly that she never gave the phone back to Charles Vallow.
That's right.
State will move to admit 286.
Same objection.
Same objection, Your Honor.
286 is admitted.
I'm not gonna play it this time. Did Lori Vallow ever call 911?
She did not.
Not playing it. Yeah, never mind. Do you know who called 911?
I believe Alex Cox called 911.
We've discussed that she had multiple cell phones, correct?
Correct.
And so did you later learn that she also had Charles Vallow's cell phone?
I did.
So she has at least 2 cell phones with her, but she did not call 911.
That's correct.
After you interviewed Lori, did you have to get her and Tylee back to where the car was?
I did, yes.
Did you and someone else drive her, Tylee, and Alex Cox back?
Myself and, at the time, Detective, but now Lieutenant Moffett did.
So can you tell us about that?
So the interviews were concluded, and we were going to get them back to the house. The search warrant was still ongoing at the house, but to get them back to get vehicles, they weren't in custody. So I obtained our victim services has a minivan because it just holds a lot of people. And we used the minivan to take everyone back to the scene instead of driving 2 different cars with people. So I drove and Detective Moffett sat in the very back Tylee was sitting up front with me, and Lori and Alex were behind me.
What was Lori's demeanor in the car with her brother and you and Moffett?
She was unaffected, not emotional. The best description I can give is that she chattered the whole way, basically back to the house. Not upset, almost not happy, but just really unaffected by everything that was going on. It was kind of striking.
Is there any acknowledgement about what had happened?
No.
Basically just talking like it was any other day?
That's a good description, yes.
Did you ever hear her talk about or say anything like, oh, I need to let Charles Vallow's sons know that he's dead?
No, not specifically. She had referenced at one point, like, calling people, but not that she needed to, like, do additional, like, death notification.
When you got back to the 5531 South Four Peaks place, did you see Lori, Alex, and Tylee leave in that red Kia SUV?
They did. They left in the rental car.
Okay. What did you do initially after that?
So that was the first time that I came into the house. I came just into basically the threshold first part of that room. Detective Coons and Detective Duncan were finishing the search warrant, and they were talking about some of the things that they had found. And there was some initial kind of discussion between us, and then I ultimately left because I had a different case to go work on. So I left to go do something else.
Did you go back to the police station?
I did.
Around 2 or so, did you get a call to see if you could help find Lori or Alex to come back to the house?
Yes. The detectives that were at the scene that were done doing, they were finishing the scene investigation. They were wondering if I could try to get in touch with Lori or Alex to try to get them to come back to the scene because their intention was to try to do a walkthrough and some additional investigation. So I made a couple phone calls to the number that Lori had provided to me.
So you made more than one call to that 808 number.
I believe two.
Did you leave a message?
I left a message, yes.
Okay. After you had called and tried to reach her, what did you do?
I ended up going back to the scene very briefly while they were finishing. And at that point, Alex had come back to the scene. Lori and Tylee were present with that red rental car again. And I was outside, and the other detectives were inside finishing up crime scene work.
Did you ever learn from Detective Coons or Duncan that they had searched the house and they couldn't find Charles's cell phone?
When I went back the second time, the detectives on scene, Coons and Duncan, had said that they couldn't find his phone.
And you had interviewed Lori, so you knew that at some point she'd had it, right?
Correct.
And she had, in fact, told you multiple times that she had refused to give it back to Charles, right?
That's correct.
But you had never asked her, do you still have it?
I did not.
So you're at the house, you see Lori and Tylee. Did you go ask her about it?
I did.
So can you tell us about that?
I walked up to where the vehicle had pulled up. Tylee was actually still inside the car, and I asked them if they knew where Charles's phone was. And at that point, they volunteered that they had the phone. I believe Tylee pulled it out of the cup holder to hand to me. And I asked them if they knew what the passcode to the phone was, and both of them were able to give me the passcode. And I took custody of the phone from them.
Did Lori tell you anything about where she found the phone?
I think she said that she found the phone in the car.
When you were asking her about her now deceased husband's phone that she found in the car, what is her demeanor like when she's interacting with you again here?
It's the same that it's been the whole time. Pretty calm and kind of unaffected by what's going on.
Did it seem odd to you that she said that she found that inside his car when she was talking to you about having it in her hands and refusing to give it to Charles?
It struck me as a little odd, yes.
So they give you the phone and you said that you were able to get the passcode or PIN for it. Did Lori say she knew it as well?
Lori and Tylee.
And what was the passcode?
I believe it was all zeros.
Okay. Did you ever check to see if that would open the phone?
I did not.
Did you later give Charles's phone to be given to Detective McDonald?
I did.
You can have an paralegal approach with 245. Do you remember or recognize what Exhibit 245 is?
I do.
And what is that?
So this is evidence item 131035-1, and it's a cell phone in a black case. And then it's kind of common practice, the passcode's on a sticky on the phone.
Is that the phone that was given to you by Tylee with Lori there?
I believe so, yes.
Did you provide that to Officer Allness to then give it to a Detective McDonald?
So Sergeant Ulness, at the time of this, was the sergeant over our computer crime section, which is where Detective McDonald worked. And it's common practice for us to turn over items to them so they can do exams.
And does that phone have the number for this case and other information to indicate to you that it is the phone that you got from Lori Vallow or Tylee?
It does.
So each case, is there a specific number? Each case has their own DR number or incident number?
So each investigation will have their own DR number, and then our evidence, each item generates its own unique evidence item number, and those numbers are associated specifically with the specific report number.
And does that then tie in specifically to the phone that we've been discussing that belonged to Charles Vallow?
Correct.
The phone that Lori had talked to you about as the whole reason this whole incident occurred.
Right.
The state will move to admit 245.
Any objection?
No objection.
245 is admitted.
Did you later then submit a request to have an examination or extraction done of Charles's cell phone?
Correct.
And then you said you used the sticky on the front to let them know how to get into it.
Correct. We'll put it, if we know it, we'll put it in the request, but oftentimes we'll put it directly with the phone also.
I have no other questions for this witness, Your Honor.
All right, cross.
Detective Ynclan, who was the case agent on July 11th, 2018?
That would have been Detective Moffett, who's now Lieutenant Moffett.
Okay. And then when did Detective Duncan when did the switch happen from Detective Moffett to Detective Duncan being the case agent? Do you know?
When Detective Moffett was promoted to Sergeant Moffett. Once you're promoted, you go back to patrol as a supervisor. So when you leave the unit, we reassign case officer responsibility to a detective that's currently inside the unit. So if somebody retires or promotes, that case agent responsibility would shift over to someone else.
Okay. Do you know when that was about?
I don't.
Was it like sometime in that year of 2019 or much later?
I don't know.
Okay. You had talked about when you got the call to come and respond to the house on July 11th. About what time was that?
It was probably about 10 or 15 minutes after the initial radio traffic. I just remember I was on the 202 going westbound and my phone rang.
And when you showed up, you had stated that Alex was seated on the curb. Is that correct?
He was the first time I noticed him, yes.
And you also stated that an adult female and Tylee were already across the street when you arrived?
No,
Oh, we weren't there yet.
no.
Okay. How long after you arrived did we arrive?
I don't know when you arrived. I just became aware of you at some point. I did not see you arrive. You were not there when I got there, but at some point you got there and I became aware of you outside.
Okay. But you weren't in the house, correct?
No,
In the morning? So where were you that you didn't see us coming up at that, in between that time?
I was in front of the house.
And was your view obscured by something?
I don't believe so.
So you didn't see us drive up, you just noticed us being there at some point?
Correct.
Okay. And when you first saw us, what were we doing? Were we talking to the officer
I believe so.
or waiting to talk to the officer?
When I first saw you, Officer Krautheim was standing with you, and it appeared like you were all talking together. I couldn't hear you from where I was at. I just noticed you.
Okay, so you saw him talking to us, but you didn't see us initially come up before when he told us to stay where we were. You didn't see that part.
I just became aware of you standing there.
Okay. And you talked about my demeanor, right? Being ordinary. Is that what you said?
Being ordinary?
You said ordinary, non-emotional, nonchalant.
Correct.
What's your definition of nonchalant?
Pretty almost detached, just calm, doesn't really matter, kind of not extraordinary.
Do you have a degree in psychology?
I do not.
Do you know what a person should act like if they're in a stressful situation?
So there isn't one way to act. There's just behavior that is striking.
Striking behavior.
Correct.
Okay. At some point when you came over to talk to me and my daughter, did we express to you that she needed her medications that were in the house?
I believe so, and that
And what did you instruct us about?
at one point I advised the detectives that were inside of that request, but that a search warrant was happening inside the house. So we would do our best to facilitate people getting things from the house. But the search warrant's going to take precedence to what's going on.
Right, so basically that it's a crime scene and we can't really enter, but someone would try to get them for her?
Correct.
Okay, and did someone go and get them for her?
At that point, we did not have a search warrant. We weren't going to be entering the house or removing any items from the house. We didn't have legal authority to go in and remove items without a search warrant. So nothing was going to be removed from the house at that point.
But you were aware that she needed her panic attack medicine?
I was
Objection as to testifying and asked and answered.
Sustained, you can ask her if she was aware that she needed that medication.
You were aware that she needed her medication?
I was aware you made a request for her medication.
And it would have been non-emotional if I was trying to be calm for my daughter?
I'm going to object to speculation.
Sustained.
Were you being calm?
I believe so.
Was Officer Krautine being calm?
I think so.
Were the firefighters being calm?
I didn't see the firefighters or have any interaction with them.
Were the other detectives being calm?
I believe so.
The EMS guys were being calm?
Again, I didn't see them and have any interaction with them.
But it was a pretty calm environment that day, was it not?
I don't know if I'd agree with that, but
Well, no one was running around hysterical, right?
correct.
Okay. The information that you received from the briefing, was that from Officer, is it Krautine? Sorry,
Krautheim.
Krautheim. Okay, thank you. Was Officer Krautheim the one that gave you the briefing on what had happened?
So Officer Krautheim and Officer Wisbicki, who Sergeant Wisbicki now, provided information to the detectives and my sergeant that had arrived.
And then who briefed you personally?
So it's a kind of a collective conversation where the initial information is provided and then we start doing assignments, basically.
Right, so Officer, sorry, say his name one more time.
Krautheim.
Krautheim. Okay, I'm going to write that in phonetically.
I'm going to again object
I'm sorry.
to testifying.
So he was wearing a body cam, is that correct, that day? Officer Krautheim.
Correct.
And so was that briefing on body cam?
I don't know.
And you talked about the death notification to me and to Tylee. You said that Tylee and I were in the van. Is that correct?
Correct, when I came over to talk to you.
And who was with you?
My sergeant, Sergeant Lockwood.
And was Detective Moffat not with you as well?
He was not.
And so you had stated that you had asked me to get out of the van? Is that correct?
I was trying to get you to come, my intention was to get you to come out of the van, and then you made a statement that you were there, you already knew.
What did you say that made me say that I was already there?
I was asking you to step out of the van, and you said, I was there, I already know.
I already know what?
That Charles had died. I was trying not to tell you in front of your daughter.
That would have been nice, but that wasn't the point. How did I know you were coming to give me a death notification?
I'm going to object to speculation.
Sustained.
Did you notify me that I'm going to give you a death notification? I don't want to do it in front of your daughter? What did you say?
It would be slightly redundant to tell you I was doing a death notification if I didn't want to tell you in front of your daughter.
Why would I say to you, I already know?
Sustained, that's, the form of the question calls for her to speculate about your state of mind.
So did you speak to me giving me a death notification, or was it Lockwood, sorry. Who spoke to us,
We were both involved in the conversation.
and what was said to us?
You said that you were there and you already knew. And at that point, shortly thereafter, I asked you if you and Tylee would come back to the station to do interviews so I could talk with you.
You asked us if we would come, or you said we're going to go down to the station and interview you?
I asked you if you would come. It was a consensual contact. It was a voluntary interview.
And is this on body cam?
I did not have a body cam at the time, no.
Did Lockwood have a body cam?
He did not. He was assigned to investigations.
So we voluntarily went to the station, is that correct?
Correct?
And you drove, is that correct?
I did.
And it was a 20 or so minute drive.
About that.
And we arrived at the station, and you separated us into 2 rooms, is that correct?
Correct.
And did you ask me permission to speak to my minor daughter?
I indicated to you that I wanted to interview both of you and that we would go do the interviews in the Family Advocacy Center.
And what is the protocol for interviewing a minor?
It depends on the circumstances where you're interviewing them.
Okay, and are you a certified forensic interview of children?
I am.
And so would that be something that you would ask the parent if you could interview the minor child?
It depends on the circumstances.
Okay, and did you ask me?
I did not specifically ask your permission.
Did you ask Tylee if she wanted to be interviewed?
I'm going to object to hearsay.
Well, the question, I'll overrule the objection. The question is, did you ask Tylee, yes or no?
I did at one point ask if I could speak with her.
Did either of us know that we were being videotaped?
I don't know.
Were we told that we were being videotaped?
No.
At that time, when we entered into the rooms, you left Tylee in there alone and came in to interview me, is that correct?
Correct.
And how long was that interview that you and I had?
I think it's about 35, 40 minutes, maybe a little longer.
And so that whole time, Tylee was in the room by herself,
Correct.
not knowing she was being videoed, correct?
I don't know if she knew or not.
And without her medication, correct?
I don't know, but I believe so.
And I was worried about her, if you recall, is that correct?
Object to relevance.
Sustained.
Do you always wear your gun when you are doing a forensic interview of a child?
The majority of the time now, yes, because my assignment's different. When my assignment was in our family violence unit and I was doing forensic interviews of child victims, then no.
Did you treat us like we were victims that day?
Actually, yes.
And did you think that wearing your gun might be intimidating to a child?
No, given her age, no.
Is that your normal protocol?
An object asked and answered.
She can answer. Overrule.
For which part?
For wearing your gun doing a forensic interview of a child?
So I wasn't doing a DFI of Tylee. I was doing an interview with a witness to a scene. If it was a DFI, it would be different.
How would it be different?
So a dedicated forensic interview of a child is much different. It's structured much different. It's conducted much differently, and they're typically done of victims of very specific allegations. Physical child abuse, sexual child abuse, things along those lines. The interview with Tylee was done basically as a witness interview. I did defer some to almost like a victim status, but her interview wasn't a DFI. It wasn't done as a dedicated forensic interview. She was a witness, a potential witness to a homicide.
How long did you interview Tylee for?
I believe we talked for about similar amount of time, 30, 40 minutes.
At the time, that day on July 11th, did you believe Tylee?
I'm going to object.
Sustained.
With your experience in forensically interviewing children, did you think Tylee's demeanor was genuine that day?
I'm going to object to speculation.
Sustained.
Did you have a reason to think that she might be making something up?
I'm going to object again to speculation.
Sustained.
Did you learn during Tylee's interview?
I'm going to object right there to hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you learn during my interview that Tylee came in with a bat?
I did.
And was that confirmed by Tylee?
And I'm going to object, Your Honor, pretrial ruling
yeah.
hearsay.
Sustained.
Your Honor, can we have a sidebar?
No, that's hearsay. It's sustained.
At the end of our interviews, Detective Ynclan, where did you put us?
You stayed in the Family Advocacy Center until we were ready to leave.
And did you put us in a room with a victim's advocate
I did.
and introduce us to her?
I did.
And we spoke to her.
I believe so, yes.
And then after however long that was, then you came in with my brother Alex, is that correct?
We met them outside of the Family Advocacy Center, and then we left to go back to the house.
And you stated that I chatted the whole way back, is that correct?
You did.
It wasn't Tylee and Alex chatting the whole way, it was me specifically?
You mostly.
It wasn't me just looking out the window and them talking to you?
I'm going to object to asked and answered.
You can answer. Overruled. You can answer.
Can you ask it again?
It wasn't Alex and Tylee speaking to you and me just looking out the window the whole way home?
No.
And then when we got back to the house, what happened then?
You, Tylee, and Alex left in the rental car, the little red like SUV, and I spoke briefly with the detectives who were on the scene.
Who told us to leave in the rental car?
I don't recall who told you. I just know that Alex could not take his vehicle because the search warrant was still going and the vehicle was on the curtilage of the property.
Right. So we were told we couldn't take the truck, is that correct?
I believe so.
And we were told we couldn't take Tylee's Jeep, is that correct?
Correct, it was in the garage.
And we couldn't take my car because it was in the garage as well?
I believe so.
And so our only alternative, because we couldn't enter the house, is that correct?
Correct.
And that we were told that we could come back later, but not at that time, is that correct?
At the conclusion of the search warrant, yes.
And so we were told that we could take the rental car because it wasn't behind the police tape, is that correct?
Correct, it wasn't part of the search warrant.
that we could leave and that we could come back later after we picked up JJ from school. Is that correct?
You could come back, assuming you picked him up from school, yes?
Well, that's not what we were instructed to do.
Objection, again, testifying.
Sustained.
So we left, is that correct? And then you entered the house after that?
You left, correct, and I entered the house after that, correct?
And what did you do inside the house after we left?
I had some brief discussion with the detectives who were on scene, and at that point left to go work on another case.
So in the brief discussions that you had with whoever this was, were you briefing them on the events of what had happened up to that point, or?
So Detective Coons and Detective Duncan were present, along with Detective Werther. There was a crime scene technician as well, and they were briefly discussing some of the artifacts that they had found in the search warrant and kind of what they were going to do. And I indicated if I wasn't needed, I was going to go work on other casework.
Okay. And then you left shortly after that?
I did.
About what time do you think that was?
I honestly have no idea.
Do you know what time we got back to the house?
I don't specifically recall, no.
You indicated that when we came back to do for Alex to do the walkthrough, that you realized you didn't have Charles' phone, is that correct?
They had indicated prior to you coming back that they had not recovered Charles's phone. So when you returned, I asked you and subsequently Tylee about Charles's phone and where it was at.
And did she hand over the phone to you right away, right?
She did. She picked it up out of the cup holder and handed it to me.
And that's where it had been pretty much the whole day since I ran out the door with it.
I'm going to object to speculation and
Sustained.
testifying.
And then you asked us for the code, is that correct?
I did.
And Tylee gave you the code, is that correct?
Correct.
And that was about what time?
It was later in the afternoon, but I don't remember what time.
And then what happens to the phone as far as chain of custody? What happened from you taking it from Tylee to where it went next?
So our computer crimes detectives work within the main station where I work. Most of our detectives work out of there. And they do the physical exams and the downloads of the phones, computers, electronic devices there at the station. Our property room is separate. It's about a mile away from the police department. So typically when we have cell phones or devices that need exams, we will immediately deliver the device to the computer crimes section. Their workspace, their cubicles and workspace upstairs is a dedicated locked area. The only people that can get into where their cubicles and exam space are the detectives that work in that area. So it sounds silly. We go up and bang on the door and get in touch with somebody, and we will turn devices over to them. And then in our property section and our report management, we do what's called an evidence continuity sheet. So that shows how items travel from place to place, person to person, like a phone to a computer detective, or like evidence from the property room to the lab or something like that. So we will physically hand over items to the computer crimes detectives. Often cell phones have very time-sensitive criteria as well. So we don't typically impound them straight into property. They go straight to a computer crimes detective.
Okay, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Thank you for that. I'm going to backtrack to, from your hands, it goes into a evidence bag?
No, it's usually in a bag. It's not sealed because we hand it over because they're going to do an exam.
So who did you hand it over to them at the station, or did you give it to someone else at the house?
No, it got handed over at the station in their workspace. They typically don't come out to scenes unless we request them. So the majority of the time we're turning evidence over to them at the station or their work area.
Okay, so just so I understand, it went from you to them.
Correct.
So you had it in your hands and delivered it to them at the station that day?
I believe so, yes.
And so according to the grand jury, it was at 3:11 p.m.
Your Honor.
Oh, sorry.
The objection sustained.
My understanding was that it was about
Hold on,
3.
hold on.
Objection.
Let's break for the evening recess. Let's have the jurors report and be ready for 10:15 tomorrow morning, 10:15. Please remember the admonition.
All rise for the jury. Detective Ynclan, yesterday we were talking about the chain of custody of the phone, so I have a couple questions on that. Yesterday we talked about that Charles' phone went from your hands to the property room, is that correct?
No.
Okay. Where did it,
When I explained to you, it's our computer crimes division, the
Okay.
detectives that do the downloads. Our property room is about a mile away from the police department.
okay. So it went from your hands to the computer crimes division, is that correct?
Correct. We usually take phones directly to them.
And how long was that between the time you left the house and you delivered that phone to them?
It's about 20-minute drive or so, and then just to the PD and upstairs to where their office is.
Okay. And who did you turn that over to at the computer crimes division?
Sergeant Olness was the sergeant of the unit at the time.
And did you use the passcode to access the phone at all?
I did not. I don't do downloads or exams of devices.
Okay. Did you look to see if the threatening text messages from Charles did actually exist?
I did not do an exam of the phone.
Yesterday, we watched the clip of my interview with you, and we discussed the threatening text messages. Is that correct?
Correct. You told me about them.
And you stated that I did not show them to you. Is that correct?
You did not show them to me, no.
And did you ask me to show them to you?
I did not.
Had I been cooperative all that day?
Yes.
Do you think I would have shown them to you if you would have asked me?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Was Tylee also cooperative that day?
I believe so.
Was Alex cooperative that day
I don't know. I did not have contact with Alex.
at all?
I did not interview him or talk to him, no.
Did I, in fact, inform you during that interview that I would have to show you them to explain them?
I believe so.
But you never asked me to show them to you?
I did not.
Did you ever request that I turn my phone over to you?
I did not.
Did you ever request that Tylee turned her phone over to you?
I did not.
In the course of your investigation, did you ever, in fact, see those threatening messages from Charles to me?
I did not. I did not look at any of the downloads of any of the phones.
Or in the reports or anything?
No.
You never came across those?
I did not review those reports or do any of the downloads of any of the phones.
You didn't review any of Detective Duncan's reports?
No?
None of Detective Moffat's reports?
No.
Okay. Were you aware of the reason why I had two phones at the time?
I was not.
Did you ask me?
No, I wasn't aware you had two phones.
In the course of your investigation, did you ever learn that Charles had stolen my phone, so I had to replace it?
I'm going to object to testifying and move to strike.
Sustained.
Your Honor, it's all part of the investigation.
I'm going to object again.
Sustained, it's testimony. The form of the question was testimony.
Were you aware that after he gave it back to me that I kept both phones?
I'm going to again object.
Sustained.
Detective, in the course of your investigation, did you learn that Charles had a $2 million life insurance policy on me?
I knew there was a life insurance policy. I don't know the amount.
Did you ever see it in any of the reports, or?
I did not review, and I was not part of that portion of the investigation.
And you never saw that on any kind of Bates numbers?
I'm going to object again to asked and answered.
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You didn't see it on any kind of Bates numbers?
No, Bates would be what the county attorney does. That's after me, so I didn't review that portion of the report.
Okay. Yesterday, during your direct, you said that, or during our discussion, you said that we arrived at the Chandler Police Station and that we were taken into the Family Advocacy Center. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is that what it's called?
Yes, the FAC, or Family Advocacy Center.
Okay. And was that just Tylee and myself that were taken to that part of the station?
I believe so, yes.
And so was Alex taken to the regular part of the police station?
He was in a different portion in an interview room in the persons crime section downstairs.
Okay. So we were taken into 3 different rooms, is that correct? When we arrived?
3 different interview rooms, yes.
And we were all 3 interviewed, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And you interviewed me, is that correct?
I did.
And you also interviewed Tylee, is that correct?
I did.
And Detective Moffett is the one that interviewed Alex, is that correct?
I believe so.
And these interviews were all video and audio recorded, is that correct?
I believe so.
And did you have a supervisor or superior there at the Chandler Police Station watching these interviews live from a viewing room?
Not a supervisor.
Who was it?
There was a detective in sex crimes that was monitoring the interviews in the Family Advocacy Center. It's kind of standard, particularly the fact that Tylee was alone in the interview room at some point. So she was monitoring both interviews, and I don't know if there was anybody monitoring Detective Moffat's interview, because I was not a part of that.
Okay. And what was her name? Detective what?
Ashley Nolan.
And then you said that you had, so you didn't go in and monitor during the interview with Detective Moffat and Alex? You didn't watch that one?
No, it was going on at the same time. I couldn't interview you and Tylee and monitor at the same time.
And then that means that Detective Duncan wasn't monitoring yours either at the same time, correct?
I don't know what Detective Duncan was doing.
I meant Detective Moffat, I'm sorry.
Oh, I don't know. I believe he was talking to Alex, but
But he could have been monitoring yours and then talked to Alex after that, is that correct?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Were there other people in this monitoring room that you know of?
I believe Detective Nolan was monitoring from her desk as the sex crimes detectives work within the Family Advocacy Center. They're in the same portion of the building.
Okay. So they can just monitor from their desk?
Correct.
They're not in like a separate room, is what you're saying?
No, there's a monitoring room upstairs in the dedicated suspect interview rooms, but none of those rooms were used in these 3 interviews that you're talking about.
Okay. And after these interviews were complete, who decided to send us home?
Well, I decided to drive you guys back to the house.
And who gave you authorization to release us, I guess?
Me?
You didn't have to talk to a superior for that?
No.
And what about Alex? Who released him?
That would be Detective Moffat was involved with his interview. I was not.
So did you and Detective Moffat have a discussion on what to do next after our interviews were complete?
Briefly, that we were done with the interviews and that at this point, whether or not to get you back to the house and how we were going to facilitate that.
Okay, but it was decided at that time that we would be brought back together and taken in the van to back to the house and dropped off?
It was the easiest way to get the 3 of you back at the same time.
Are you aware of the press release that was issued by Chandler Police Department later that day?
I am not.
You never read it?
I don't.
You never heard about it in the course of your investigation?
The press release?
Yeah.
No.
You never discussed it with any of the other detectives?
I would object. She's asked and answered.
Sustain.
Would the case agent have to be the one who would authorize that at the time?
It depends. As a case agent, we would like to have input or influence on what a press release is or states, but occasionally they're published by our PIO, our press information officer.
So you don't, do you know if Detective Moffat was the case agent at the time, is that correct?
He was.
And so do you know if he talked to the PIO and put that out, or if he didn't know?
Objection, speculation.
Sustain.
Do you know if the PIO agent just put it out?
Objection, she doesn't know about this.
Do you know?
I have no idea.
Right.
Detective Ynclan, yesterday the prosecutor asked you several times, why didn't Lori just give the phone back? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you learn in your investigation that the entire altercation only lasted a few minutes?
That'd be a fair assessment.
Because we discussed that in our interview, is that correct?
We did.
So from the time Tyler came out with the bat and I ran outside is maybe less than 2 minutes. We discussed that, is that correct?
We discussed that it probably happened in a short amount of time. I don't think we gave a specific time amount to what happened, but that it happened in a relatively short amount of time.
We didn't say that was like 1 to 2 minutes, like,
That was our discussion, yes.
yeah, that was our discussion. Okay. So we would not have been arguing for a very long time, is that correct?
I think it's relative as to how long you've been arguing or how long the altercation took.
Detective, in the course of your investigation, did you learn that JJ was outside in the car?
I did.
Did you learn that the car was still running?
I don't know.
Did you learn that JJ was in fact in the front seat?
I know that you had articulated he was put into the car, but I don't remember if you specifically said the front seat, but he was in the car.
Did you learn in the course of your investigation that JJ had autism?
Yes, you told me about that.
Did you verify that at his school?
I did speak with his school, yes.
When did you speak with the school?
During the course of the investigation, I had contact with the school in reference to when he attended and generally kind of the services the school provides.
Do you remember who you spoke to at the school at all?
The director of the school, and then subsequently, there were a couple teachers that provided some information.
And how long after July 11th was that first communication with the school?
It was just several months later.
But during the course of this investigation, the Chandler Police Department did verify, I guess that next day, that that was in fact his school and he did attend there. Is that correct?
I believe so.
During this investigation, did you verify that we did in fact go through Burger King?
I did not, but it was verified.
Were you aware of what we ordered at Burger King?
You told me it was chicken fries and Sprite.
Had you seen, you hadn't seen that receipt?
I had not.
Okay. I guess that was, in fact, in the portion of one of the interviews that we watched yesterday. Is that correct?
Correct. You told me that in the interview.
So were you aware that we also ordered 2 bottles of water?
I was not aware, no.
And in your experience with people in stressful situations, when adrenaline kicks in, does it make you incredibly thirsty?
I don't object to speculation or knowledge.
If she knows, she can answer.
It can.
And when you're in fight or flight mode, does your adrenaline kick in your experience?
I'm going to object here to knowledge and foundation as to our knowledge of this.
I'll sustain the objection.
Did you offer Tylee and I apple juice at the Chandler Police Station?
I think I offered you something to drink and what we typically would have there.
Did you offer that for the purpose that adrenaline makes you thirsty?
No, I usually do it to people I interview if they'd like something to drink while they're there.
Detective Ynclan, have you ever seen me not calm?
I don't object to maybe foundation as to when.
All right, sustain, lay more foundation on when she has, at what occasions she has had to observe you.
Well, yesterday, you spoke often of my calm demeanor, my nonchalantness. Is that correct?
Correct.
So has there ever been an occasion when you have seen me when I was not calm?
Again, foundation as to when she has seen her on July 11th.
Please clarify the time frame you're referring to where she had an opportunity to observe you.
Any other time, Your Honor?
For example, how many hours on July?
Can we have a sidebar? Can I ask you a question?
right, go ahead and continue with your cross.
Detective Ynclan, did you discover in your investigation that I had run outside without shoes?
Yes, kind of.
And did you learn in that investigation that we had stopped at Walgreens and I did purchase 2 pairs of flip-flops?
Yeah, you told me that.
I mean, and that was verified later?
It was by a different detective.
Okay. You didn't verify that at Walgreens or at Burger King, is that correct?
I did not. That was a different detective.
Okay. And as part of your investigation, did you view the video of me going into the Walgreens to purchase the flip-flops?
I did not.
Okay. And how hot was it that day on July 11th, 2019?
Warm.
Like in the hundreds?
July in Arizona. I'd say it was probably warm.
Would it have been difficult to walk JJ to his class on the cement with no shoes on, do you think?
Objection, relevance, speculation.
Sustained. I think the jury can draw their own conclusions about the temperature in Arizona in mid-July.
Detective, did you learn in your investigation that after taking JJ to his classroom that Tylee and I headed straight back to the house?
I believe so.
And that we met with police? Is that correct?
Correct. You
As soon as we
contacted
drove up, first contact was with,
Officer Krautheim.
yes, Krautheim. Okay, thank you. Detective, is it your understanding that we fully cooperated with the police?
You were cooperative with interviews with me.
That we did as we were instructed?
You, with me in your interview, you were cooperative.
And Tylee was cooperative with you as well, correct?
I believe so.
And that you had said yesterday that we were voluntarily interviewed by the police, is that correct?
Correct. You were not in custody.
Did we know that?
I believe so.
When we were placed in those interview rooms, did we know that we could just walk out and leave anytime? Was that explained to us, is my question.
You can ask that.
Can you say it again?
Was it explained to us at any time that we could just walk out of those interview rooms and leave if we had wanted to?
No.
Did I in fact ask you at one point if I could go to the ladies' room?
I believe so.
Detective, did we answer all the questions asked to us by the police that day?
By me, yes, I believe so.
And we were dropped off at home by the police, is that correct?
Correct. I drove you back to the house.
And we were given no further instructions, is that correct?
Just that we would be in touch with you at the conclusion of the search warrant.
Is it also correct that we voluntarily handed over Charles' phone to you when you asked for it?
Yes.
Did we delay in that or just do it immediately?
No, you gave it to me when I asked.
Was there any time, Detective, on July 11th, 2019, that we did not comply or cooperate fully with the police in their investigation?
In my interaction with you, you were cooperative.
Thank you, that's all I have, Your Honor.
Redirect.
I'm going to start with when you first arrived on scene. You were asked a lot yesterday when you first noticed the defendant. Were you standing there at the house just waiting and watching to see what cars would arrive?
No.
So when you first noticed the defendant was You just happened to glance over and see another officer speaking with her.
Correct.
You were asked a lot about her demeanor that day, both when you first interacted with her, taking her over to the van, correct?
Correct.
Did Lori Vallow's behavior stand out to you?
It did.
Why?
So based on what was going on, that we had a homicide, her husband had been shot and killed, her brother was the one who shot and killed her husband, it was inside her home, her children were at least partially present to this event. Her demeanor seemed odd given what was going on at the house that day.
So throughout this time, you're just noting her demeanor, right?
Correct.
You were asked about whether or not you were calm at the scene. Do you recall being asked that on cross?
I believe so.
Had you just seen your husband get shot
No,
inside your own home
no,
by your brother?
no,
You were asked if the other officers at the scene were calm. You recall being asked that?
I do.
Were you aware of any of them having just seen their significant others being shot
No,
by a family member
no,
inside their own home
no,
with their children present?
no.
So would it be difficult to compare the demeanor of the officers and yourself with that of, say, Alex or Tylee or the defendant?
It would be difficult comparison.
Not the same situation.
No,
You were asked a lot about Tylee's demeanor as well. Did you ever see her appearing to be panicked,
no,
overwhelmed with emotions?
no,
Was there anything about her demeanor or your interactions with her that made you feel she needed any type of medical treatment or medication or anything?
no.
The death notification that you attempted to make, I'll say. So to understand this, we're both Lori Vallow and Tylee inside the van.
They were inside the CR 288 van.
Okay. Can you describe for us what this van looks like? Is it like a minivan? What is it?
No, it's a larger, like 10 or 12 passenger vans, big, full size. So the doors open from the side to get into, I think there's like 3 rows of seating. And they use the van to bring services out, but also to transport people, and they have car seats and things like that.
Okay. So when you went up to the van, you opened the door?
Correct, the side door to open to get into the rear portion of the van.
And you were with your sergeant at the time?
Correct.
And you asked if Lori would come out with you?
I was trying to get her to come out of the van to talk to her outside of Tylee's presence.
Why did you want to do that?
I felt it was more appropriate if I was about to tell somebody that a family member died to deliver it to her. And then typically what we'll try to do is kind of formulate a plan as to how we're going to tell children as to what happened.
But before that, did Lori Vallow tell you something?
She did.
What did she tell you?
She said that she already knew because she was there.
And this was not what you were expecting to hear.
It was not.
You were expecting that she had no idea,
Correct.
that she rolled back up to this house and sees her brother out there but doesn't know what's going on.
Correct.
After you learned that she was there, did you now feel like you wanted to ask her what happened?
Correct. We wanted to, at that point, transition to not just like a death notification and contacting her, but now we're potentially looking at doing witness interviews.
Did you advise her that you wanted to take her to the station to interview her?
I did.
Did you advise her you wanted to interview her daughter?
I did.
And did you in fact ask her to come with you in a different vehicle?
I did.
She agreed to do that?
She did.
Now, how old was Tylee?
16 or 17?
And she was put in a separate room than her mom. Why?
So when you're going to do witness interviews or any interviews, you want to do the interviews separately. You don't want to interview people together. Obviously, even best case scenario, there's going to be some influence. So you want a good recount or statement from somebody that's their own statement. It's what they saw, heard, felt, not influenced by anybody else in the room or participating in like a group interview.
Were you aware when you were conducting this interview with Lori and with Tylee of the amount of time that had occurred from when she had left the house to when 911 was called to when she was eventually interviewed?
Generally, not specific, but I knew the general time.
Initially at the scene, was there a misunderstanding? Well, let me ask you. When you arrived at the scene that morning, did you understand that when the 911 call came in is when the shooting occurred?
I think that was believed or assumed at the time we got to the scene.
Okay. And was that still your mindset when you were interviewing initially Lori Vallow?
Correct.
So when you started to interview her, you assumed that when that 911 call came in, the shooting had occurred just prior to that?
Correct.
When you were driving Lori back to the police station, to FAC for interviews, you again told us about her demeanor. Did that again stick out to you as unusual?
It did.
Why was that?
Again, this incident has unfolded and we're driving and she's just kind of chattering in the car, and given what was going on in the situation and how she was acting, it was just odd to me.
You were asked about, just on cross, whether or not you gave the defendant a specific time when she could come back to the house. Do you recall that?
I believe so.
Did you have any concept of when Detective Coons or Duncan would be finished executing that search warrant on the house?
No, and that's not an assumption we would do.
So you don't have, they don't tell you a timeline like, hey, detective, we'll be done by 3 so they can come in?
No, because in processing a scene, you just don't know. So you wouldn't want to give that kind of time constraint when processing a scene. You're going to go through and very slowly and methodically collect and photograph and process. You're not going to limit a time. We typically try to give them an idea, maybe most of the night, several hours, but I wouldn't tell them a specific time to come back.
And your interactions with Lori, you hadn't even been in the house yet, right?
I had not.
So you have no concept of what the scene's going to be like
Correct.
or how long that might take.
Correct.
When you were interviewing the defendant, is it normal for you to offer drinks to people when they're being interviewed?
Absolutely.
Normal for you to allow them to use the restroom?
Yes,
And you did that here just like you normally would?
I did.
Nothing different or unusual in that?
No.
Detective, when you were interviewing the defendant on July 11th, did the defendant tell you that she and Charles argued about the phone prior to Tylee ever becoming involved?
Correct.
Did she tell you that she had initially obtained Charles's phone, and when he asked for it back, she said no?
Correct.
This is before Tylee's there.
That's right.
Does she tell you that she then, in fact, confronts Charles about who he's texting?
Correct.
And that's again before Charles is out there,
Before Tylee was there.
before Tylee is there. And she advised you that she still wouldn't give him back his phone, even though he demanded it then.
Correct.
Did she tell you that she was walking away with Charles's phone prior to Tylee coming out while he is still demanding his phone back?
Correct.
So there were multiple occasions that she told you about prior to any bat or gun being involved that she could have just handed the phone back over,
That's correct.
and she did not.
That's correct.
In terms of your interview with the defendant, did you understand all the facts of the case when you interviewed the defendant?
No.
You told us you didn't understand the timeline yet in terms of when the shooting occurred versus when the 911 call occurred, right?
Correct.
So you were unaware of that 47-minute lapse in time.
Correct.
If you had known that, would you have asked about that?
I would have asked about that, yes.
When you were interviewing the defendant, you were unaware that she had Charles's phone, correct?
Correct.
If you had known that, would you have asked about that?
I would have asked about that, yes.
When the defendant was talking to you, at one point, she told you that she knew her brother was texting with, or that Charles was texting with her brother Adam. Do you recall that?
Yes, she told me that.
Understanding now that she had Charles's phone, would you have asked her how she learned about that?
I would have asked her about that, yes.
So when you're doing an interview with her at 9 or 10 in the morning, you didn't know that she'd had time to look into Charles's phone?
Correct.
You learned later that she had the password to get into his phone, right?
Correct.
So when she's telling you things, you're unaware that she has already potentially had the ability to access those.
That's true.
And what she's telling you in her interview contained information about the interaction between her brother Adam and Charles.
Right.
When you interviewed the defendant, were you aware of the days leading up to this, the interaction between Lori Vallow and her brother Alex?
I was not.
You weren't privy to things like iCloud accounts before you interviewed her?
No.
You weren't privy to downloaded cell phones before you interviewed her?
I was not.
You hadn't even been inside the house before you interviewed her.
Correct.
If you had been privy to all of the information in this case, would you have interviewed her differently?
I would have.
Would you have questioned her more?
Yes.
Would you have followed up more?
Yes.
Would you have asked for her phone then?
Yes.
When you interviewed Lori Vallow, at that time, were you just going off of what she said because you didn't know the rest of the facts
Correct. It was an initial interview.
to see what she had to tell you?
Correct.
But you had nothing to do to be able to verify or validate anything she told you?
Correct.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
All right, I see we have a few jury questions. I think we're going to have the parties approach for those who are having difficulty with their headsets. the jury. Was the rent-a-car vehicle ever searched?
I do not believe so, but I'm not certain.
All right. Question form number 12. If the defendant and her daughter were interviewed as witnesses, why were they left with a victim advocate? In other words, were they considered victims or witnesses?
So our victim services section, I introduced Lori to them specifically because there are civilian employees that work within our police department that can help families with death investigations for the issues that come up afterwards and kind of navigating that process. So although they might not be classified under like state law as victims, our victim services section will often help our families with like specific crisis type events and navigating that process. So we use them quite a bit in our death investigations.
All right, on question form number 13, did Lori express concerns about police talking with Tylee at the time of the interview?
She did not.
Does law enforcement have to advise interviewees they are being audio and or video recorded?
They do not. There is no expectation of privacy within a police station.
All right, are there any further juror questions at this time? Not seeing any. Would the defendant like to follow up on those juror questions?
No, Your Honor.
State?
Just briefly, with regards to introducing Lori entirely to your victim services, were you trying to provide whatever services might be necessary due to the fact that her husband had been killed?
Correct.
And what you assumed at that point was Tylee's dad or stepdad had been killed?
Correct.
And again, this is all prior to you learning more about this case?
Correct.